Hello and welcome back. In this episode we're going to spend a little bit of time showing, not telling, for our first draft. Let's get started. We're in the writing studio, we're preparing our first draft. Now I've written a scene already, and the reason I wanted to show it to you is because it ties in with an earlier episode we did on world building. So I'll read this one out, and what I want you to pay attention to is to notice how little I need to describe things. So in the world building episode, we pulled in some photographs from the internet and we had a think about what this place would look like. Now a lot of people would try and describe that, and it's very easy to talk about the train chuffing into the King's Cross and the smoke and the steam and the bustle and describe all of the costumes. And I'm going to show you that that's not necessary. All you need to do is pick out a few things and really try and do it in a way that shows the character. So here, this is what I've written. The train into King's Cross was quiet. Being a Sunday, most people would have been at church for the morning, then returning home for a roast lunch. Robert had shaved his beard down to a smartly trimmed moustache. He wore a simple brown suit with tie and a bowler hat. It was a long time since he'd worn formal clothing. As he exited the station, he realised the gaps in his planning. He knew he wanted to find a spiritualist or two, but he barely knew where to start looking. So I have used some telling there, and that's about as much as I would like to do. I don't want to go much further. I want to show as much as possible. So now you'll see that we switch and we start showing, or showing a lot more. A boy walked past hitting a hoop with a stick. He watched people getting off the omnibus, the horse-drawn tram that helped commuters around the city. He saw people emerge from the staircase that descended to the new Metropolitan Railway, the underground electrical train system they were building beneath the streets of London. We really are entering the modern age, Robert mumbled to himself. Whilst the engineering miracles of London were bringing sewage system and underground trains, above ground lurked the crimes of prostitution, thievery and murder that had become synonymous with London. He saw a newspaper kiosk, remarkable for being open on the Lord's Day. I guess it's true that London really never sleeps, he mused. Excuse me, sir, do you have a local paper, one with classifieds? These two here, what are you looking for? Spiritualists, mediums, do they advertise in these? Better off with the Standard. He passed the newspaper across, emblazoned with the ghoulish headline of Ripper Kills in America. Another murder, Robert asked. Looks that way, another dolly mop, but this one's in New York. They think old Jack took a ship to America and has started doing his butchering to the American girls. Cut her up, he did, like a butcher. Chopped her into little pieces. Good riddance, I say. I only hope he has gone. I'm sounding like Dick Van Dyke. Mary Poppins. God bless you, bloke. Goodness, that is awful. It is, sir. That's a halfpenny for the paper, and you'll find the classifieds at the back. But another thing, I don't know how good she is, but there's a lady that drinks in the Farthing over there. He pointed to a pub. She's an older lady with the name Agnes. Ask at the bar, they'll know who she is. She knows a lot of stuff about seances and spiritualists. I know she goes to them. It's probably cost you a drink or two, but I'm sure she can tell you which of them are frauds and which of them are real. Robert tipped his bowler. Much obliged, thank you. Now, why am I showing you this? Well, I'm trying to set the scene and to show London of this day, and I'm trying not to tell you as best I can. I'm trying to show you. But at the same time, I'm not describing it. I'm not going to great lengths to describe it. So the only part of real telling is that introduction where we talk about he gets the train into King's Cross, mentions that people would normally be at church on a Sunday. You know, nowadays nobody goes to church, but back then they did. So we're kind of setting the scene and the time. A boy walks past hitting a hoop. There are people getting off the omnibus, the horse-drawn tram. So straight away we can kind of get a picture of what this place was like. People going into the new Metropolitan Railway, which we now call the Underground, but it used to be called the Metropolitan. He mentions, well, it's wonderful, they're building a sewage system. You know, out in the countryside they didn't have that. London was the first place to get it. But then I go into dialogue, and dialogue is one of my favourite ways to show what we're doing. You can show people having a conversation and reveal quite a lot about them in that conversation. So in this case, we get really the first time to see how Robert interacts with people. He's on a mission now. He has a quest. He's trying to find a medium or a spiritualist. He has a chat with a newspaper vendor, and they discuss a real-life case. This was when the murders of Jack the Ripper stopped in London. There was a very similar murder in America, and the newspapers really believed that he'd moved. And this happened, I believe, 1891. So I've used a little bit of real history. But the reason I wanted to show you this was to show how it ties back to that episode of world building. We looked at it, we did a little bit of research, we know roughly what this place looks like, but we don't have to describe it in detail. What's more important is that we show the story. Today we have a little bit of a treat. One of my students, a lady called Davina Shah, is working on a Mauritian folklore story, and she's very kindly allowed us to use the opening of her first draft because it contains some interesting show don't tell errors, and it's very easy to look at her version and show how we correct those errors. When I write my first draft, because I'm a little bit more experienced, I'm missing out on the common problems, and I asked Davina if we could use hers to have a look, and she said yes. So I'm just going to read it out straight so you get an idea. So this is Davina's first draft. 1836, the Samson Sugar Estate, Rivière de Rempart, District Mauritius. Capel Dev held his lower back with both hands and stretched. He wiped his forehead with the back of his hand and downed his tools for a moment. He worked with another Indian labourer, laying a new path to the estate. Capel Dev arrived as an indentured labourer to the island 2 years ago. Born in Dhaka, Bihar in 1789, he was recruited at the docks and set sail on the Globe to Port Louis Harbour, Mauritius, in search of a new life. Capel, Capel! A younger man ran down the hill with arms flailing to the sides like a madman. Capel Dev ran towards the man and clutched his upper arm. What is it, Gopal? It's your daughter. Take over. Capel ran over the hill into the sugarcane field towards a small wooden shack. Inside, his wife, I can't even say it, Dhanapatya, sobbed whilst cradling a small 1-year-old girl on the bed. The child was pale with abnormally pink lips, and her breathing was laboured. Capel sat down onto the bed next to his wife. Dhanapatya helplessly passed the tiny child over to her husband and wailed. "Take me instead," she said, looking up above. So, this is quite a good first draft. This is really what you want. You want to come up with something like this so that you can then work on it and revise it. But this is a perfect way to begin. But there's a really nice show don't tell issue with it. We can improve it. So if we look at this, so we know it's a prologue. These characters aren't coming back. We've got Capel Dev arrived as an indentured labourer to the island. Are we showing that? Are we showing him get off the boat? No. So we can delete it. It's not that important. Capel Dev held his lower back. I'm looking at the beginning. Capel Dev held his lower back with both hands and stretched. He wiped his forehead with the back of his hand and downed his tools for the moment. Is that an exciting way to begin a story or to get somebody hooked in? It's about a guy who's using tools. It's not that important. The important part is this bit. A man's running down with his arms flailing like a madman. Now we can put that in. So let's just have a look. So we could re-edit this and say, Capel Dev put down his tools. Let's say when he saw the man running towards him, screaming his name. Now, is that a stronger opening, and are we showing it? Capel Dev put down his tools when he saw the man running towards him, screaming his name. Capel! Capel! So he's really shouting it out. And then we go straight into dialogue. What is it? He yelled back. Now, do we know his name? Gopal. Fighting for breath. Gopal ran to him, fighting for breath. You need... He gasped. You need to go home. Dana, what was the name? Let's call her Dana. We'll change the name, character name, something easier. Dana needs you. And let's just show a little bit of action. Gopal bent over to rest his hands on his knees and draw deep breaths. And again, Capel's like, why? Why? What's happened? Let's say, what's happened to Dana? I could say, not Dana. Did we mention the name of the baby? It's your daughter. We didn't have a name for the baby. I don't know Mauritian baby names. Oh, let's just say, not Dana. Your daughter. Davina. There we go. Your daughter Davina. What's wrong? A little more urgently, I suppose. She is sick. Capel grabbed Gopal by the shoulders. Tell me, Gopal, what is wrong? He shook his head. He shook his head. Looks like the devil has her. There we go. She's screaming in bright red. Dana wants you to go home. Go home right now. Okay. I know, actually, we could just leave it off there. So let's have a look at the difference between explaining he came on a boat and blah, blah, blah. Now, we say Capel Dev put down his tools when he saw the man running towards him, screaming his name. Capel, Capel! What is it? He yelled back. Gopal ran to him, fighting for breath. You need, he gasped. You need to go home. Dana needs you. Gopal bent over to rest his hands on his knees and draw deep breaths. Why? What's happened to Dana? Not Dana, your daughter Davina. What's wrong? She's sick. Capel grabbed Gopal by the shoulders. Tell me, Gopal, what is wrong? He shook his head. It looks like the devil has her. She's screaming and bright red. Dana wants you to go home right now. Now, look at the difference between that version. We don't need to explain that he arrived on a boat. We don't need to explain that he was digging a path. We don't need to... None of that's important. All that's important is a man is running to him, screaming and saying, you've got to go home. Your wife needs you because your daughter's sick. That's the story. And the way that we're doing it now is to really show that, rather than to explain what kind of day it was, what they were wearing, how he arrived there, and what year he arrived. It's not important. The drama is that his daughter is very sick, and he needs to go home, and he needs to go home right now. So I really wanted to show you that one because I think it's a great demonstration of showing, don't tell. And Davina's version, Davina's first draft, is very typical of what most people's first drafts will be like. And we're quite happy with that. If you remember the rules that I said, write hard, write fast, get it down on paper, because in the future, what we're going to start doing is looking back at that first draft, making sure that we edit it and get the right scenes in the right order. And we do that first before we start to make the text beautiful. And that's what we're going to be looking at soon.